have massed troops on the border of Ukraine, and there's a very real possibility of what has been the odd skirmish violating the ceasefire turning into a real shooting war. And that, as I said, was, at least from my perspective, was very unexpected. The buildup has been very recent, very quick, and that is a very serious situation that we need to keep an eye on, particularly here in Canada, because it potentially involves our NATO commitments, and not just in theory, but we actually have troops on the ground in the Baltic countries. I believe it's Latvia. It's Latvia or Lithuania. I can't remember which. So, if an actual shooting war breaks out, I don't see the Russians invading and reoccupying the Baltic countries, which would automatically engage Canadian military personnel. But the question is going to be, how are we in the West with NATO? Even though Ukraine is not a NATO country, we have, given certain guarantees to the Ukrainian government that we will support them as NATO and in their confrontation with Russia if it becomes a hot war and it's necessary. So, that sort of sums up three areas of international high tension. I think the area that is probably the most likely to blow up, figuratively speaking, or who knows, perhaps literally speaking, is probably the Ukraine-Russia situation, followed perhaps by the Israel-Iran situation, although I truly don't expect that to happen, but if I'm ranking them, I'd say that falls far behind, followed still by the situation in the Far East. I don't think that the Chinese are ready to go to war over Taiwan, and I don't think that Taiwan is ready to go to war with the Chinese communists, and so there's going to be a lot of posturing there. But eventually, as they have in the past, cooler heads are going to prevail, and they're going to all stand down, and until the next time that they rattle their sabers. So that's kind of an around the world tour.
I think there is a wild card in amongst all that that needs to be considered. And I don't know how this is going to play out, but you have a new president on the scene. This isn't Trump we're dealing with, who is very forthright in his dealings with on the international stage to the point of being blunt, sometimes rudely so.
Even better, Nick. Sorry if I could just interrupt on that point. Even better, okay. Unpredictable. People actually were criticizing him, saying, oh, that's terrible. Look, you're too erratic. But the truth is, that actually, I think, helped him, whether it was on purpose or not. So
that part's debatable, but it's certainly because it was unpredictable. One of the most dangerous animals in North America is a buffalo or a bull moose, especially at rutting season. And it's because they are so unpredictable. Bears are the same thing. They're in the case of bears, the reason they're unpredictable is because they're not very bright, and you never know what's going to set them off. Now, I'm not saying Trump was a stupid man by any stretch, but I am saying that his unpredictability kept people off balance and never really knew how, whether he would carry through with something or not. But with Joe Biden in the White House,
they were afraid of him because of that. And that's,
absolutely.
And fear is a very powerful weapon to use in international diplomacy. So they could throw stones at him to a degree, verbally and make fun of him and ridicule him and criticize him, but in the end, you just never knew how he was going to react, and so that scared people, and he was able to use that, I think, again, by design or by accident, very effectively. But sorry, I interrupted. You were talking about Joe Biden, Nick.
Yeah, because he's everything. Trump was everything Biden's not. Trump was his own man, and Biden has to be held by the hand and led down the aisle. When it comes to what to say next and so on. And I don't think he carries the same kind of presence on the stage that Trump did on the international stage. So when you factor that in, you've got a weak White House on the international stage that when wars do break out, usually, historically, it's when the guy who wants to start the war looks at his opponent and says, they are weak, and I can beat them because of their weakness. And that's been true of so many wars, it's not even funny. And I'm not talking about just in the 20th century. That's probably all the way back as far as you want to go. When they assess their enemy, if they think they're weak and can be beaten, they'll go to war. If they think they're strong and they're going to lose, they won't. It's part of what held Hitler's hand back in the 1930s because the French army was so strong. He just was unsure of the strength of their leadership. And he took some serious gambles and won because they didn't react. Well, Joe Biden fits into that mold. He's got a huge military, probably one of the best in the world as far as equipment and size is concerned. But will he use it? Or is he just so much, afraid of what the country across the street will say, that he'd rather try to appease people like a Neville Chamberlain than he would try to defend people. So this is a wild card I don't think you can easily dismiss, is the new presidency. And when you add all that to the mix, it isn't a pretty thought.
It is a factor that has to be considered, and I have thought about it, and I certainly don't dismiss the points that you're raising on this, Nick. I think that they are vitally important, and I don't know. It's kind of, as you say, it's kind of a wild card. If you know that the United States is going to intervene, that just changes the equation altogether. But
right.
If you believe, or if you doubt, seriously doubt, that the United States will intervene, and if the United States will not intervene, then chances are that other NATO countries will refrain from intervening. Then you might be tempted. And the historical example is when the Russians invaded and now occupy the Crimean Peninsula and the Black Sea, which is Ukrainian territory. And they did that under Barack Obama. And they would only have done that if they had calculated, and in this case, correctly, that under President Obama, the United States would not take serious action in response to that invasion and occupation. And in fact, they didn't. They took no military action, and they took very little diplomatic action. And so that is an invasion that the Russians got away with. And I have to confess, I'm trying to wrap my mind, at that time I was trying to wrap my mind around the why. I don't see what the Russians gain from occupying the Crimea. I don't see, if it comes down to it, what the Russians gain by engaging or by invading eastern Ukraine and taking over that territory, that border territory. True, there are lots of ethnic Russians who live there, perhaps even a majority. But are you going to risk all-out war with the Ukraine, which is not, it's not the United States, but it's not, and it's not an entirely incapable military power. They have a good army. They're well armed, and they have nuclear weapons.
And they're not the Chechen rebels. I mean, this is not some ad hoc force, as you point out. I think part of it is just like, and I'm going back into history again, take Napoleon, take Caesar, take anybody you want to. They see an acquisition of territory, and don't forget, Ukraine is the breadbasket of the continent. It's got the most fertile land on earth in there. That alone is an enticing thing when you consider the size of Russia and the challenges that come with keeping their people fed, given, for the most part, their shorter growing season, all that sort of thing. They want to have as much foodstuffs as they can get. And I don't have any idea what their natural resources are like coal, gas, and oil and so on, because the Russians, they have an appetite for that stuff too. What about natural gas? Who knows? So this is a test, at least as I see it, that Putin is testing the West to find out for himself the same thing that Hitler did 80 years ago, 100 years ago, when he tested the Western powers and said, are you really going to come after me over not Poland, but over the Sudetenland or Austria? Are you really going to fight over Czechoslovakia? And when the answer kept coming back, no, 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 then he said, okay, then in that case, let's go, drop the gloves and away we go. And that's what started World War II. So this very well could be what Putin's doing. He's trying to find out just how much political will there is to stand up to him, even though there's only so many, like the NATO powers have known for a long time where he's going to attack, how he's going to attack. There's only so many passes. They have their forces aligned in the right places, so it's going to be a bloodbath. And he's willing to risk that because he doesn't think NATO has the strength to has the courage to pull the trigger.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, we're coming to the end of another rather frenetic 2 hours. It's coming up to the top of the hour. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to call it quits there, Nick. It's been I want to say it's been a blast, but maybe that's not the right language to use given the topic of this last segment. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. Let me know, or not let me know, let your friends and family know about the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, take a minute and share it to your social media accounts, because we love to have listeners. And that's it for me tonight, Nick.
All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to bow out as well. I wish all of you a great week, and in the meantime, we'll be Caritas et amor Deus EBS. Good evening, God bless, don't let anything disturb your peace, and may you have a fair wind and a following sea.